Grownups, are you looking for a way to boost your Tailblazers' learning experience at home? Whether they are ahead of the class and looking for more of a challenge, or they need a little extra support in a specific subject, IXL Learning has you covered, offering interactive practice in math, English language arts, science, and social studies. With personalized feedback, engaging educational games, and lessons organized by grade and topic, IXL helps kids learn in a way that's both fun and effective. I have heard from so many parents how helpful IXL's instant grading and progress reports are, giving them real-time insights into how their child is doing. Right now, Girl Tales listeners get an exclusive 20% off their IXL membership when they sign up at IXL.com/girltales. Visit IXL.com/girltales.
Attention, fans of fairy tales. The award-winning Pinna original podcast Grim, Grimmer, Grimmest has new episodes out now. I'm Adam Gidwitz, best-selling author of children's books, and in Grim, Grimmer, Grimmest, I share classic fairy tales with a wonderful group of kids. There's always a great variety of tales to explore with your family. You can listen to Grim, Grimmer, Grimmest now wherever you get your podcasts, and be sure to follow the show so you don't miss new episodes.
Hey Tailblazers, I'm Rebecca Cunningham, and this is Girl Tales, a kids podcast packed with girl power and stories where every child's voice matters. Before we get started, I'd like to wish a very happy birthday to Juniper in New Jersey and Piper. Juniper and Piper, thank you so much for listening to Girl Tales. Grownups, Girl Tales is brought to you by families like yours. If you would like to hear your child's name at the top of our next episode, or if you would like me to wish them a happy birthday, head to patreon.com/girltales and join a team today. Now, on to our episode. This is The Haunted House on Whispering Willow Lane. Enjoy! Doesn't that just bring shivers all down your spine? Whenever I hear sounds like that, I start thinking about one thing. It's Halloween! Almost, anyway. I love this time of year. All month we get to do fun things like make creepy costumes, create spooky party decorations, bake yummy treats, and of course get ready to go trick or treating. The whole town really gets into the treat part, but it wasn't always like that. You see, during the Great Depression, when people didn't have enough money to buy treats, some kids would pull really mean tricks on them, even here in Freshwater. That's when one girl decided she'd had enough, and her revenge started one of Freshwater's spookiest Halloween traditions. Elizabeth Marjorie Huntley hated her name. She didn't care that she was named after some distant relative. It was so old-fashioned, and this was 1933 for heaven's sake. Bad enough everything was hard these days. Her dad lost his job when the bank closed. They moved to a new town because that's where Aunt Sella lived, and now she had to share a room with her two little cousins, who were boys. And Thomas snored. At least her new school was okay. She liked her teacher, Miss Palmer, and the lessons weren't too difficult. They got to read lots of stories, especially scary ones, which she loved. It would be nice if she didn't have to wear the same old clothes all the time, though. Her winter coat was already too small, and it was only October. But the thought of this time of year brought an instant smile to Elizabeth's face. Even though the Great Depression had been going on for 4 years, which meant Elizabeth had already spent almost half of her life either cold or hungry or both. October 31st, Halloween, was the one day of the year she looked forward to, because it was the one day she could count on getting a treat. She could not wait to see what Freshwater had to offer. Candied apples, maybe a jelly drop or chocolate bonbon. Any treat would be treasured, hidden away from her cousins so she could savor the delicious sweetness all by herself. But a big handful of candy corn was what she dreamt of most. That was her favorite. Attention, attention students, I have an announcement. So it came as a real shock when just a few days before Halloween, Miss Palmer gave Elizabeth's class the most distressing news possible. All trick-or-treating is canceled. Elizabeth couldn't believe it. She asked her teacher to read the announcement again, just to be absolutely sure she'd heard what she thought she'd heard. What did she say? How can... No! Due to the behavior of a few bad apples last Halloween, this year, all trick-or-treating is canceled. At recess, Elizabeth was desperate to get to the bottom of this awful turn of events. She asked anyone who would talk to her why this was happening. Finally, one of the older girls shared the sad truth. Last year, a bunch of the big boys in school took the trick in trick-or-treat pretty far. Too far, if you ask me. They turned over cars, set trash cans on fire, threw rocks through people's windows. Why? Guess they were just really mad that no one had any candy to give out. This one boy, Jack Norris, he was especially mean to the old lady on Whispering Willow Lane. As she spoke, she pointed to a tall boy in a checkered shirt, hanging out with some other kids on the other side of the playground. He was chewing something, then spit it out as he laughed at an unheard joke. Elizabeth thought he looked mean. He broke a lot of her windows, even chased the old lady's cat, a black one, of course. This must be her revenge. Everyone knows she's a witch. A witch? Elizabeth wasn't usually one to believe town gossip, but there was something about the way the girl had said witch. Was it fear? It made Elizabeth want to see for herself. After school, she took the long way home, walking down Whispering Willow Lane, a street she'd never been on before. A cold breeze kicked up, making an eerie noise as it whisked through the many trees. So that's where the street got its name. The sound made her shiver. She could see that this used to be a nice neighborhood, but now the once impressive houses were draped in dying brown vines, with paint peeling and lawns overrun by weeds and untrimmed shrubs. Maybe it was just the wind, but the whole block seemed a little creepy, and Elizabeth made a mental note never to walk down this street at night. One house in particular stood out. It was the biggest, grandest, and most forgotten-looking of all of them. Many windows were broken and boarded up. A handwritten sign on the front porch told her this was the house everyone was talking about. In red, dripping letters, it simply said, "Beware." Oh, hey, kitty. It's okay. I won't hurt you. Elizabeth bent down to find a skinny and scared black cat stuck between the broken slats of an old wooden fence. She looked around to see if anyone was nearby. She thought she caught a glimpse of something moving inside, a shadow in a window, way at the top of the house. Hello? Is someone there? Is this your cat? But no one answered. Elizabeth turned her attention back to the cat. She gently reached out her hand to let the animal get a good sniff. Once she had the cat's trust, Elizabeth tugged on the fence boards until the opening was wide enough for it to pull free. The cat raced through the yard, then up some steps onto the front porch, where it started rubbing against the weather-worn front door. No one came to let it in. In the distance, clouds gathered. A storm was coming. She knocked on the door. The tarnished brass knocker rang out, a bit louder than she meant it to. "Hello, I think your cat wants in." Elizabeth waited a few seconds, and still no one came. But just as she was about to walk away, the door slowly creaked open. The cat ran inside. Elizabeth poked her head in to make sure the cat belonged there. "Hi! Anybody home? Sorry to bother you. Just want to be sure this is your cat. I think it's gonna rain soon." But no one was there. Storm clouds meant the light was growing dim outside. But inside the house was already very dark and very cold. There was no fire lit, only one lone candle burning on a small crate next to a rocking chair, surrounded by piles of books. Elizabeth couldn't help but peek at some of the titles. Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, Dracula, the complete works of Edgar Allan Poe. Her favorite Poe story, The Telltale Heart, popped into her head. For a second, she thought she heard distant heartbeats, slowly growing louder. With a start, Elizabeth turned around to see the front door had slammed shut. She rushed over, tugged with all her might, but it wouldn't open. It was stuck. Or was it locked? The cat was at the foot of a grand staircase, or what used to be one anyway. Like everything else, it seemed forgotten and tired, lined with cobwebs and rickety, broken rails. The cat was scurrying up the stairs, but kept looking back like it wanted Elizabeth to follow. Elizabeth didn't know what to do. It was normal to drop in on neighbors, the ones you knew at least, but she'd never met this woman. The sign out front made her feel unwelcome, but how could she leave? The front door was locked. She had to find another way out. She picked up the candle and followed the cat into darkness. At the top of the stairs, the rush of the wind grew louder. Elizabeth entered a long, dark hallway and could see where the sound was coming from. The many broken windows did little to keep the elements out. Suddenly, there was a flash of lightning, and rain began to pour. In the darkness, she lost sight of the cat for a second, but the lightning momentarily illuminated a door that was ajar, and she saw the cat's tail disappear inside. "Hello? Anybody here?"
"That's my good girl. Where have you been? I was so worried."
Inside the tidy bedroom was no witch. It was a petite, gentle, lonely old woman, lovingly petting the black cat.
"Hello, young lady. Did you let Bessie here in? It's getting harder and harder for me to make it down those stairs, and she can be so impatient. Can't you, my sweet?"
I did. It's starting to rain and the door was open, so...
"Yes, the latch on that thing is getting finickier and finickier. Won't lock when you want it to, and then just locks itself when you're trying to go out. It's on the long list of things that need fixing around here. You know how it is these days. But where are my manners? What's your name, dear? I owe you a big thanks."
Elizabeth Huntley." The old lady got a puzzled look on her face, and then her expression changed to a playful smile.
"Elizabeth Margaret Huntley?"
"Yes, but how did you..."
"Because that's my name too. I believe we're related."
Now it was Elizabeth's turn to be shocked. She could hardly believe it. She was face to face with the distant relative she'd been named after. How did this sweet lady with the same name as her come to be feared as the town witch?
"Well, that's a long story. I like long stories, especially scary ones. Me too.
Elizabeth Margaret Huntley I began to tell Elizabeth Margaret Huntley the Younger all about her life, how she grew up right there in Freshwater and married her high school sweetheart.
We didn't have any money to speak of. We inherited this big house from my husband's family, but somehow we managed. Sadly, we were never able to have children, but we had a happy life. I became a nurse. In my spare time, I would paint and write poetry and write in our garden. Still do when I can. We'd taken a stray cat from time to time, like sweet little Bessie here.
But then her husband died in the great influenza outbreak of 1918. She'd been living on her own ever since. Things got really tough after her life savings was wiped out in the stock market crash of 1929. Once the Depression hit, she couldn't afford to pay the help anymore, or to support her struggling family members.
I was so embarrassed. I had always been independent, even generous, some would say. But when the money ran out, my pride got the best of me. I didn't want to be a burden. I retreated from everything, kept to myself. The house just started to look really scary, I guess. Kids being kids, they went around making up stories. It didn't bother me until I caught some of them stealing from my garden. They had no right to take it without asking. That's when I told the police on them. They sure didn't like that, especially that tall boy.
Jack Norris.
Was it because of you that Halloween got canceled? Might have been. Most of us on the street can't afford to give out sweets anymore. Without treats, the kids went wild with the tricks. I had to let the city know we were scared, but I tell you, I truly didn't mean to ruin anyone's fun. I don't mean to be a bother to anyone, not even my own family.
This struck Elizabeth as especially sad. Aunt Sella says family is never a bother, even if they do snore like Cousin Thomas. Mrs. Huntley couldn't help but laugh at that.
A snorer, huh? That's a fine family member to have to share a room with.
Family is why we live here now, to help each other. I bet we could help you sometime, if you'd let us. Her young relative's sweet sincerity opened something in Mrs. Huntley's heart that had been closed for a long, long time.
I think that would be very nice. But we can't both be Elizabeth. That would get confusing. I used to go by Lizzie. You got a nickname you like?
Elizabeth suits me just fine. Aunt Lizzie.
Aunt Lizzie. I like that. What do you think, Bessie?
Elizabeth couldn't wait to get home and tell the whole family she had met the witch, who wasn't a witch, but was actually the very relative she was named after. Aunt Sella admitted she'd been trying to get Lizzie to come over for years, but she never did, so Sella had given up. Sella felt awful about this. She and Elizabeth's parents wasted no time inviting Aunt Lizzie over, and this time wouldn't take no for an answer. Lizzie joined them for dinner, making more to eat by sharing a few things from her garden. Everyone was happy to have her. The cousins less so, hanging on to the fear and perhaps some hope that she was actually a witch after all. Aunt Lizzie found it absolutely hilarious that even after meeting her, anyone would still think that she's a witch. But that gave Elizabeth a big idea. She figured if people were going to be afraid of Aunt Lizzie anyway, they may as well make it a good show. She got her parents and her cousins and a few of her friends to help make Aunt Lizzie's house something that would truly scare the pants off anyone. Relying on the motto of the day, use it up, wear it out, make do or do without, Elizabeth and her crew got creative, finding cheap and innovative ways to turn Aunt Lizzie's house into an interactive, spooky experience. They hung hairnets from the ceiling to create a creepy spiderweb feeling when walked under. They used damp sponges to create dripping sounds. and place strips of fur on the walls, then added raw pieces of liver for extra gore. Aunt Lizzie donated pumpkins from her garden that were turned into jack-o'-lanterns, which lined the porch and beckoned the brave of heart to enter, if they dared. Elizabeth's dad wrapped himself in ripped-up old sheets, pretending to be a mummy, ready to chase people as they walked by. Even Bessie got into the act, randomly shrieking when someone startled her, and Elizabeth hid under the stairs, beating a toy drum to make a sound she was sure would scare anyone. All this spooky fun could be had for the low admission price of one piece of candy and a promise not to play any more tricks on people. On Halloween night, the moon was full. The neighborhood kids lined up all the way down the street, building up their courage, convincing each other they weren't too scared to finally go inside the witch's house. Jack Norris bragged to anyone who would listen how nothing was going to scare him. Jack paid his admission, a piece of candy dropped into the bowl by the front door, then entered the house with his usual swagger. He pretended not to notice the slimy webs that brushed against his face. He pretended not to care about the gory meat dripping blood down the walls. He laughed as two little boys groaned from the shadows. But then he heard a sound that startled even him. A heartbeat, growing louder. He pretended he wasn't afraid as he rounded a corner and came face to face with a mummy. Jack let out a blood-curdling scream and ran for the door, pushing aside anyone who got in his way. Elizabeth watched him run and couldn't help but smile. Her cousins called her over to the candy bowl. It was pretty full, including a nice big handful of candy corn. The haunted house was a huge success. And that is how the haunted house on Whispering Willow Lane came to be Freshwater's first haunted house, and a tradition that still lives on today. What's going on in your community for Halloween this month? Don't be afraid to try something new, no matter how scary it seems. Sorry, too much? Yeah. That was The Haunted House on Whispering Willow Lane, written by Ann Austen, performed and executive produced by Rebecca Cunningham, produced by Chad Chenail. Grownups, thanks for listening to Girl Tales with your Tailblazers. Before you go, here are some questions to help keep the conversation going with your child. What part of today's story did you enjoy the most, and why? Did you connect with a character in this story? Did you learn something new? How did you feel about this story? Did it remind you of something in your own life? We hope this sparks some fun and meaningful conversations. Girl Tales is a Cordelia Studios production. Grownups, you can get access to ad-free episodes of Girl Tales, as well as a range of other shows for the kids in your life by subscribing to Starglow Plus on Apple Podcasts. If you'd like to hear me narrate the original stories of Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, or Rebecca of Sunnybrook Farm, head to patreon.com/girltales and join Team Sunnybrook or above. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. And hey, if you loved this story, share it with a friend. Oh, and remember, I believe in you.
There's a hill and a road and a path where I know you must go. Through the sun, wind, rain, or snow. But wherever you venture, you can always come home. 'Cause I trust your heart, I trust my heart, and I trust your mind, I trust my mind, and I trust the friends, I trust the friends I know you will find o'er the hill and on the road. So off you go, and remember, I believe in you.
Starglow!
Hey Grownups, is your kid a fan of ghost stories? Well then have we got the podcast for you. The new middle grade podcast, Ghost Tour, is out now. Follow Lee and Vern, two totally opposite teens, as they explore Jepson, widely known as the most haunted city in America. They'll turn their local ghost tour company upside down when they meet an array of ghosts, revealing hard truths about their hometown and, in turn, themselves. Ghost Tour, a spooky and funny podcast. You can listen to it anywhere you get your podcasts.